The Jacksonville Jaguars may possibly have found a gem in offensive lineman Wyatt Milium. I'll tell you why it's so important, especially since they don't have a first-round pick next year. Talk about it today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcasts, whether you watch or listen. It's free to subscribe to, so make sure you go to that location and tap in so you do not miss an episode. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us every day. And if you're new, I'll give you a reason to come back, hopefully by the end of the show. A show that starts right now. I'm going to tell you where we're going to end up. We're going to end up talking about the super sophomores. I know it says super softs because I didn't want to run out of room, but I spelled it the way I spelled it. But the meaning is the same thing, whether or not it's soft or sophomore. We got some pretty big expectations from guys that James Gladstone did not select. Trent Baalke did. How about that? We'll go over that. Other non-number one first-round rookies of impact from 2025's draft. The reason why I say other, that's where we're going to be in the middle of the show. But the reason why I said other is because I'm going to highlight one in the first segment that is not Travis Hunter. That is easy to do. The Jaguars drafted Travis Hunter in the first round, and he is undoubtedly the rookie that everyone around the country wants to see. They want to see Shador too, because poor Dylan Gabriel, I heard, ain't even playing that well up there in OTAs, and Shador is doing some pretty impressive things. But it's all about Travis Hunter. People want to see him go both ways. You've seen him wear teal and you've seen him wear white at OTAs. That means he spent primarily a lot of his time in teal. I only saw one day where he played defense, and that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Those are the ones that the media are invited to. But then it goes right back to offense today, right? Everyone is so invested in what are they going to do with Travis that I think folks forget that the Jaguars gave up a bounty to get him. They gave up a first-round draft pick next year, and they gave up this year's second-round draft choice. So that means the other players that they picked this year are very, very important. The Jaguars won't draft. Hopefully, they'll make the playoffs, so they won't draft, barring a trade. They won't draft until the middle of the round, the middle or the late of round 2 next year. And I know y'all like, man, we ain't worried about no draft. We worried about what we going to do this year. Well, I just told you what they're going to do this year. They're going to pick in the back half of the draft, so at least I'm making a positive prognostication for the year. But one of the players that they did pick this year that will have a tremendous impact, I believe, on this roster, and maybe not in 2024, but overall, he'll set the template for what the Jaguars are going to be doing at a very, very important spot and in a very, very important room. And that is offensive lineman Wyatt Milium, who was chosen in the third round by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was their second of 2 third-round selections. They had 88 and 89. They took Caleb Ransom, who I think we'll mention him later on in the show. But Wyatt Milium, it's the position that the Jacksonville Jaguars fan base has talked about for forever. It's offensive lineman. It's one that we have gone over ad nauseum on this show over and over again for years, talking about the importance of offensive linemen. The Jaguars added 4 offensive linemen in free agency. 2 of them are expected to start. Pat McCarry at right guard. We don't have the official depth chart, but we're going to use the one from ESPN and the one from our lads. Pat McCarry at guard and Robert Hainsey at center. Both, by the way, were given terrible grades by PFF. If that's your thing, I get it. It's not really mine, but I don't knock it. But they both had under 60. Their scores were under 60. Hainsey was like 50 on PFF. So there are a lot of people that are polarized about that offensive line. They all agree that something needed to be done. They agreed that there needed to be depth. They don't think the Jaguars added enough firepower on the front line to really say that they addressed the offensive line. I've told people for years, tackles don't just walk around. Right or left tackles, which are positions the Jaguars didn't address, don't just walk around on the street. Also this year, the center and the guard markets were not as good or plentiful as they had been in the past. Guys got franchise tag. The Bears signed Robert Dahlman from Atlanta. I heard he wasn't a real scheme fit. At least some people don't think he was a scheme fit here in Jacksonville, although Liam Cohen and the whole crew had said that their scheme is really, really flexible. But you can pick and choose what you want to run here. You don't have to just settle for anything, especially if it's a free agent. Okay, if Dahlman's already on the roster, you say, okay, we got to do it this way because he's our best option and he's better at this, then we'll go zone or we'll go gap or whatever, right? You don't have to sign a free agent and say, okay, we'll allow that because we're going to play to his strengths. We're going to do the thing that he does best. No, you don't have to do that. So if that's the case, then I can understand them not going out and getting it. Where you can get talent, though, like a lot of these guys I'm mentioning that the Jaguars went out and tried to sign, well, they all weren't picked in the first round. And Wyatt Milium was sitting there in the third round after being an All-American, going to the Senior Bowl, switching positions. And that's a real important part of this because he was a left tackle who projected to do something else. And by the way, he was coached by Matt Moore, who's now at Virginia Tech. And Matt Moore is one of the real good offensive line coaches in the league or in college. He's well respected. So Milliam is now going to transition to, they have him listed at right guard. I think he can probably play both. I don't know if the Jaguars have told these sites, whether it's Our Labs or ESPN, exactly where he's going to play. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but let's just say he does line up at right guard. It's not necessarily my favorite thing, and this is why. Because I think Pat McCarry is one of your better offensive linemen. I think he's better than Ezra Cleveland. And Pat McCarry is your right guard, meaning if Wyatt Milium is going to compete for a starting position, he has to beat out Ezra Cleveland at left guard. And Ezra Cleveland, according to PFF, is one of your highest rated offensive linemen along with your two tackles. So I wanted to try to see if we can get him on the field, but I think these folks are higher on Ezra Cleveland than I am. And they're probably right, to be honest with you. They're probably correct. Ezra Cleveland, another guy that Trent Baalke traded for. Every time I get a chance, I'm going to mention that because I don't want people thinking that I'm going to beat Trent up, and then every time I mention something that he did right, just not talk about him. I'll mention it every now and then in fun because, it's not one of those things that's ever been really super, super personal for me. But if Ezra Cleveland holds on to that spot and if PFF is right, then that's another good move. They got him for a 6th-round pick. And if this staff agrees with it, of course, the new offensive line coach, he knows Ezra Cleveland because he was the assistant offensive line coach in Minnesota when Cleveland was there. Probably worked with him a lot. Offensive coordinator knows him too. So, yeah, it might be something to that, right? But here's why I think Milliam is important. And I'll give you this so you can ponder this as we transition to segment 2. A lot of folks felt that the Jaguars didn't do enough on their offensive line. There were some folks that thought the Jaguars could have taken one in the first round, right? They was talking about Armand Mimbo, or Will Campbell. I mean, if he fell to him, there was a lot of discussion about that. They said they needed to do something else. Well, guess what? He's the first one that they drafted. He's the first one that they drafted, then they're going to develop. And then they won't even have a chance unless they make a trade to draft one in the first round next year, or the first half of the second round if they're as good as I think. So that's why this pick is super, super important. I'm going to discuss that and other non-first round rookies who will make an impact. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. That's right, man. As a small business owner, and I've done it 3 times, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly Get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. That's the hashtag hiring frame. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high energy hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we're moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Talking about impact, man. Talking about offensive linemen, guys that were not first-round picks. Comparing that to where the team is going to be picking in the future and why those picks are so important. And we're talking about Wyatt Milium, the only draft pick, well, other than John Monheim, and we're going to get to him in just a second. The center that was taken out of Jonah was taken. I think Jonah Monheim was taken in the 7th round. Yeah, Jonah Monheim is the other offensive lineman. He's a 7th round pick, and they got some plans for him too. But I'm talking about guys that you can see, you can tell a lot of the investing that they're putting into the attention that players are playing. So to break this down from last year, there was 998 snaps played by Pat McCarry, right, for Baltimore. And the reason why I'm talking about McCarry, because I'm trying to get Wyatt Milium on the field quickly, okay? I think maybe they're working Wyatt Milium at right guard early. It's to acclimate him to the NFL. A guy who played left tackle, you automatically assume that if you played left tackle, you play left guard as opposed to right. That's not necessarily true. If you played left tackle, David Deal played left tackle and won Super Bowls with the Giants, and he was a right guard forever. And it was weird, and that's when I really noticed that a lot of times they take a guy from right guard and put him at left tackle. The Jaguars' backup left tackle this year is one of those people that I believe sort of did the same thing, and that's Fred Johnson. Fred Johnson was your backup right tackle, left tackle, and your guard for Philadelphia. I think he probably played more. Whenever they would put Landon Dickerson at center, they would put Tyler Steen at left guard, but I think Fred Johnson played a lot for Mekhi Becton when he got banged up, if I'm not mistaken. But getting back to Pat McCarry, he played 988 snaps. Not one was played at right guard. He played 6 snaps at center, 189 snaps or 169 snaps at right tackle, 1 at left tackle, and 822 snaps at left guard. So I'm projecting that what the Jaguars are projecting is that they know what they have in Ezra Cleveland. They don't know what they have in Wyatt Milium. Right now, or the start of the season, or whoever's writing this stuff, if it's accurate, because it's not the Jaguars' actual depth chart. Let's just assume that it's correct, though. You get Ezra Cleveland, who they're familiar with and who graded out highly last year. You get Pat McCarry playing a position who he didn't grade out at all last year because he hasn't played it last year. He probably played it 2 years ago. And now you're bringing along Wyatt Milium at the backup right guard spot. Do they also take a look at Milliam at left guard and say, you know what? He might push him. He might push him. Here's what I think, because the Jaguars have had so many guys miss games in that room, and hopefully the strength and conditioning coaches and the coaches, they get together and they can come up with a way to kind of, fix that a little bit. But here's something to ponder. What if the Jaguars feel like they know Pat McCarry is going to play a lot of left guard this year, either because of injury or whatever? That's why I believe they're training Wyatt Milium at right guard, and that's because Pat McCarry is better at left guard. But right now, they probably believe that Ezra Cleveland is a better option to play than Wyatt Milium. But Milium He's a rookie. And if they wanted to play Pat McCarry at the position where he played the most snaps last year, then that would mean that they would want to play Ezra Cleveland on the other side. And maybe they don't know if he can do that or not. Or maybe McCarry's a better left guard than Ezra Cleveland. But Ezra Cleveland is a better left guard than right now Wyatt Milium is a right guard. You see my point? In any event, however it shakes out, and maybe none of that is true, but however it shakes out, it makes Wyatt Milium extremely important for the Jaguars. And here's why. Because of those two backups, I believe those two young men got one-year deals. Fred Johnson at left tackle at backup, according to this depth chart, and then Chuma Edoga. I think they got one-year contracts. I don't know how far past this season Ezra Cleveland stuff is guaranteed. I think he has another year this year that's fully guaranteed under contract. I don't know if there's a penalty in letting him go next year, if that's what they want to do. I'm not saying it is. But what I am telling you is either for it to be that or an injury, Wyatt Milium becomes extremely important because, one, you don't find real good quality starters just walking around on the street in the National Football League on offensive line. And if you do, you're going to have to pay a bounty for them. And you're going to be competing with a bunch of people. Like you got to give Robert Hunt $100 million, right? They don't have a first-round pick. I anticipate they're going to be better than they were last year. So that means that they'll be picking in the second half of every round. So that means at least 50 guys are going to be gone before the Jaguars get a chance to get a bite at the apple next year. So if the offensive line is still a bit of a work in progress, the best way to get good is by somebody that you drafted that has more blue sky in their learning palette, if you will, that you have more control over, that you don't have to unbreak and unbend from bad habits. That's what makes the choice of Wyatt Milium so important. He just can't be a third-round bust. He needs to be a starter by year two, maybe, or starter capable by year two, because the Jaguars have to show that they can develop offensive linemen, because it's the thing, in my opinion, that has doomed this team in the past. All right, the other rookie that I'll mention here really briefly that I believe will have the biggest impact for the Jaguars this season as it relates to what their future look like is Caleb Ransom, obviously, who's the other third-round pick. I just think he has a lot of traits, man. He has a lot of traits, and he does a lot of things that a guy like Anthony Campanile can use. I mean, we won't know until they put on pads, but he looks the part physically. He's fast. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. I love dudes like this, and I think he's going to play really, really well. Jack Kaiser. Yep. Sounds like a dude that used to be a CIA agent and that he has a TV show on Prime or something, but he played linebacker at Notre Dame. I think he's smart. I think he has a large body of work, and I also believe that he is someone that is going to get a serious shot along with Bashaw Tootin, who was also chosen in the fourth round. Both of those guys will get a tremendous shot to help this football team this year, and I think they'll be in a position that gives you some idea of when you see a linebacker and you see a running back, okay, we got guys under contract for one more year. If we have to move on with limited draft picks next year, where at least limited high draft picks, what do we have? That's where I think these guys, Tootin, if he can stop fumbling the ball, and Kaiser can kind of be molded like clay into the image of the players that the Jaguars want them to be, because they're so young. And that's going to allow them to really, really flourish in this system. Let's talk about the super sophomores, man. We'll talk about the super sophomores on this team. Trent Baalke picked them too, but there's still enough youth and moldable clay for the new staff to have an impact. Let's discuss it here in a second on Locked On Jaguars. So we've been going over the roster today here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We're talking about the importance of these draft picks this year outside of Travis Hunter, because everyone wants to talk about the Travis Hunter pick, and it is what it is. The connection to all of these guys is their importance. It stands on their own because there are scouts that have done this work. Like a lot of people, and me included, I'm going to be transparent with you. I had heard Caleb Bradshaw, of course, Wyatt Milium. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I had heard Bayshaw Tootin's name. I knew Jack Kaiser. I did not know Jalen McLeod very well. I did not know Rayon Lane very well. I knew who Jonah Monheim was because I scouted him. And I saw LaQuint Allen. But to sit here and tell you that these were household names that I was putting with the Jacksonville Jaguars is a lie. I didn't have anybody on this list other than Travis getting picked here. None of them. There wasn't one mock draft I did that had any of the rest of those players on there. And this is what I mean when we were doing those mock drafts. I say, we don't know who they like. We don't know who they're standing on the table for. There are scouts that have been watching these dudes. We're looking at them. We're looking at highlights. These dudes have gone out and talked to these folks, guidance counselors before. Who are the ones that they want? We didn't know. And I said, if you're going to be surprised on draft day, that's a good thing because that means that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I was shocked and surprised. And I did a lot of mock drafts, and I had none of these dudes on this team. And that's a good thing. Some people get all egoed out about it. I'm not, because I told y'all this is the way it goes. This is the way it goes. So the super sophomores that I want to discuss here, players that were not chosen by the new administration that we're all so happy to have here, but nonetheless are very, very important. Let's start in the first round. Brian Thomas Jr. is the best football player on this team until further notice. And only three people that I believe can maybe even have a conversation about that. I think Trayvon's going to have a huge year this year. If Trevor Lawrence has a big year this year, he'll be in that discussion because he's the one that throws the ball to Brian Thomas Jr. Okay. And the quarterbacks always get a bunch of credit. The other one was Travis Hunter because we don't know. He's been doing one-on-one drills. They've been competing with each other, and Travis has been winning. That's what happens when you're a super freak and you're the number 2 pick in the draft, and you're a player that would have been easily a number 2 pick or a number 3 pick in any draft in recent memory that I can recall. Everybody wasn't as high on Brian Thomas Jr. We're going to talk about his draft eval because he's taking the league by storm. But the thing is I still want to say Brian is the best player on the team, but the second best player is Travis or Trayvon or Trevor Lawrence. The point is in 2024, in the last draft of the previous administration, they drafted the best player on the team. They drafted the dude that is probably the reason why Mason Graham wasn't really a serious candidate to be here. One of them is because they were going to go after Travis Hunter. But 2, if they wouldn't have been able to work that trade with Travis Hunter, Mason Graham wasn't coming here. Mason Smith is here, and he's the reason. He's one of the reasons. It's something we talked about leading up to the draft. How many 3 techniques can you have? And this is the other thing. Remember, we just talked about in free agency why you don't go get Robert Dahlman. Like if Robert Dahlman's here and he's better playing a certain style on the offensive line, and this team is the coach has already done that before, where he was flexible and he could change it. And we see he comes from Sean McVay's system, and they've changed it around a little bit. You don't do it for a free agent, and you don't do it for a player that's not already here. They ain't gonna go pick nobody and have to play 2 gap and play a 3 technique, and then another dude that's lined up somewhere as a 1. He can't play a 0. If I want to play a 0, if I want to play a big road grading nose tackle to keep my linebackers clean, then I'm not going out and voluntarily drafting a dude that doesn't do that. Mason Smith was one of the reasons why they didn't. I'm not sure if Eric Armstead, because of his age, was enough to preclude them from doing that. Even though, because they could have started Mason Graham, if they liked him enough, and still been able to rotate in Eric Armstead. But no, didn't happen. And I think it has a lot to do with it. There's talk that Jarian Jones may still start even with Travis's presence. And if he does, good for him. He's even discussed it, that they see him, hey, man, we see you the same. You want to play outside? We see you the same way. So for all of those fans out there saying he can only play nickel, this dude wants to play on the corner. You think he's trying to hide from smoke? And they view him as the same way. I told you, man, when you're a fan, sometimes you hear things and you think they're true, like all he can play is nickel. Nobody else felt that way except a small group of people who just kept regurgitating it over and over again. Javon Foster. Now we get to a name that might have a hard time making his team this year. He's 25 years old. Or maybe was he another reason why they didn't overly address the offensive line? Or I think they signed 4 in free agency. So that was, I don't think they would have signed that many people in free agency if they thought Javon Foster was good enough to help them. Jordan Jefferson, important part of this team. It's probably a backup nose tackle right now. Competing for a star position, a former teammate of Mason Smith at LSU, big 330 pounds. You want a big old dude, there you go. Another guy to back up Javon Hamilton. There he is right there. Hopefully they can extract whatever it is he has in him and he can be a big-time member of this team. DeAndre Prince has a shot. Defensive back out of Missouri. He's a body type like the people that they like. So he's going to have a shot. Keelan Robinson, I think it's going to be hard. They picked 2 running backs on the 3rd day of the draft. I think it's going to be hard for Keelan Robinson. These are some super sophomores, man, and they're still, even though they didn't pick them, they're still so young. There's some moldable clay there that they can shape into whatever they want it to. And it's going to be that draft, I believe, is going to be critical towards the future of this team. I mean, it houses the best player on the team and one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. See, so I sideways kind of gave Trent Baalke some credit, and I'm giving the Jaguars credit. And I'm telling you, there's not just going to be the newcomers. It's not just going to be the first-round picks. We get to watch them and see if they can develop players because they're going to have to. If they keep saying, hey, the hell with them first-round picks, man, they're going to have to be very, very good at doing that. Like the people where a lot of these guys came from in Minnesota as well as Los Angeles and in Green Bay. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL Scouting. If you need to go through all of your rosters, especially the Jaguars, and know and understand who these players are, Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs, they're the 2 of the best in the business. They'll make you a smarter NFL fan for it. Check it out wherever you get your podcast and make it your second listen. Appreciate y'all joining me today. Love y'all to death, man. Happy Monday. I'm going to go to OTAs Thursday. So Thursday show, that'll be, it may be an evening show because I'm going to go to OTAs, and then I'm also go back to the coaches roundtable when they talk to the assistants. So, yeah, we're going to make our way out there. I've changed my recording schedule a little bit this week just so I can make sure I get to you when I need to. All right, I'm Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. You guys take care. We'll see you next time.